Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in on this Good Friday edition. Glad to have you. 2 people are dead after a shooting at Florida State University yesterday. The alleged shooter has been ID'd as a 20-year-old student and the son of a sheriff's deputy with access to her firearm. We have the latest details on this story. According to the New York Post, Joe Biden is having a little bit of trouble getting gigs with his $300,000 per speech asking price. Is this a surprise that Uncle Joe's having a hard time finding a job? New York Attorney General Letitia James launches a fundraiser seeking donations up to $18,000 per person in wake of the alleged mortgage fraud investigation by the Trump administration. The invitation says that we are fighting for our rights. In a decision handed down yesterday, the South Carolina Supreme Court will not stop efforts to remove State Treasurer Curtis Loftis from office. We have the latest on this ongoing saga between the Treasurer's office and the South Carolina General Assembly.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills, but I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
A tragic shooting at Florida State University yesterday left 2 people dead, 6 others injured, sending shockwaves throughout the campus in Tallahassee. Authorities say the gunman was 20-year-old FSU student Phoenix Ickner, who was eventually neutralized and taken to a hospital. Investigators revealed that Ickner used a firearm that belonged to his mother, a longtime deputy with the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Officials were quick to emphasize that Deputy Jessica Ickner has had an outstanding record during her 18-year career with the Sheriff's Office, but noted the focus now is on how her weapon ended up in her son's hands. The shooting started around 11:50 a.m. yesterday. The area was quickly locked down. Law enforcement stressed that the threat was contained and that Ickner acted alone. The 2 victims who died were not students at Florida State University, according to police officials. FSU canceled classes through today, called off all athletic events in Tallahassee for the weekend. Students were urged to check with family, and the university issued support services for anyone affected and needing the services. Sophomore Ben Vateman, who had just left a therapy appointment near the student union, described the panic on campus, saying, "I thought I was witnessing just a fight until another student shouted that a shooting was underway. He and other students took shelter until police gave the all-clear command." Another student, Cole Summers, was in the student union when he heard the shots. He said, "I was getting food at Panera and heard a group of girls saying something about a gun. I heard more shots and just ran to hide." Local and federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the ATF, responded immediately. The FBI's Tallahassee office was close by and were able to get on campus pretty quickly. The officials from Jacksonville and Tampa were also involved. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed that President Trump had been briefed, and the president later called the incident horrible. Reactions poured in from Florida leaders. Governor Ron DeSantis, Senator Rick Scott, Senator Ashley Moody all offered prayers and support for victims and praised first responders' response. FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino said the agency was closely monitoring the investigation. And as of now, the area remains an active crime scene as they continue to investigate. Authorities are also reviewing security protocols and how the firearm was accessed. This shooting marks another devastating day on an American college campus, leaving the FSU community grieving and calling for answers. A federal appeals court has denied the Trump administration's emergency request to block a judge's order requiring the U.S. government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, this Maryland resident who has become a national headline and was deported to El Salvador. I still just don't understand why the Democrats think that this is such the story. I even heard some Democrat strategists yesterday on the 5 talking about how this is why the Democrats lost so badly last year, because they don't know about messaging. The strategists made the point that these Democrats need to be concerned about the victims of some of these illegals rather than the illegals themselves who have been deported. Garcia is a Maryland resident. He was deported to El Salvador. The Trump administration has admitted that, yes, it was a mistake that he went when he did, but that he was eventually going to be deported regardless. It was a paperwork error, not that he should not have been deported. Now, the unanimous decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit upheld the lower court's directive, emphasizing the government's obligation to adhere to due process and judicial authority. Abrego Garcia, who has been granted protection for deportation due to risk of persecution in El Salvador, was mistakenly deported in March. Despite the Supreme Court's order to facilitate his return, the administration has argued that it lacks the authority to retrieve him, citing El Salvador's refusal to release him from the terrorism confinement center. The president of El Salvador, Bukele, just last week said he would not be releasing this man. The appeals court criticized the administration's stance, stating that the government's actions undermine the rule of law and the constitutional balance of powers. The court's opinion highlighted the importance of judicial oversight in immigration matters and warned against executive overreach. The Department of Justice has indicated plans to appeal the ruling, while human rights advocates and legal experts continue to express concern over the administration's handling of the case. Again, if El Salvador says that they're not going to release him, what else can the Trump administration do? Send a group of Marines in and break him out of the prison? I mean, really, if El Salvador's not going to turn him over, what else can the U.S. government do? In other legal matters, New York Attorney General Letitia James appears to be moving full steam ahead with her re-election campaign, even as she faces the serious legal questions tied to her property holdings and the false information on mortgage loan applications. Here's a story just days after the Trump administration accused her of mortgage fraud. The Attorney General of New York is set to headline a high-dollar fundraiser in New York City next week, seeking donations from $500 all the way up to the state's maximum of $18,000. The event, which is part of her 2026 re-election bid, will be hosted by progressive activists Rod Grozier and Rob Smith. Smith is the CEO of the Fluid Project, which is a gender-neutral fashion brand. The invitation featured James's photo framed by a circular gay pride flag, and the event page on Act Blue bills it as a chance to show Letitia that we have her back. Gosh. That show of support comes at a politically dicey time for Ms. James. This week, the Federal Housing Finance Agency issued a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, accusing her of making false claims in mortgage documents related to two properties, one in Norfolk, Virginia, and another in Brooklyn, New York. Now, the Virginia home, which she bought with her niece in 2023, was listed by James as her principal residence in a legal document. Now, New York law requires its attorney general to maintain their primary residence in the state while in office. Neighbors in Virginia told the New York Post they've never seen her at the property. Does that surprise you? She's also accused of misrepresenting a Brooklyn building she owns as having 4 units when city records listed as having 5. Now, authorities say that the discrepancy could allow access to more favorable mortgage terms since smaller multifamily buildings are subject to different loan standards. FHFA Director William Pulte's letter laid out potential charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, making false statements to financial institutions. James's team has denied all wrongdoing, of course, in broad terms, and called the accusations a politically motivated weaponization of federal power. So far, her office hasn't directly addressed the specifics of the charges, nor have they denied the facts of the charges. Of course they haven't. You can't argue with the facts. An application is an application. And surely someone with her education, a lawyer who has risen to the highest legal office in the state of New York, she can't claim ignorance, can she? Maybe so. Maybe so. I think Miss Letitia James is going to be quite busy in the coming months. You know, this spring there's a renewed energy and focus on efficiencies, and shaking up unhealthy habits don't serve us well. There's so much chatter about making America great again, but it starts in your home with you being the best, healthiest version of yourself. And PhD Weight Loss is doing their part, because for the first time ever, the first 11 callers get 2 free weeks added to your weight loss program. That is huge. PhD's out to prove that you don't need Big Pharma to reach your goals. It just creates dependency, not long-term change. Dr. Ashley Lucas researched weight loss trends for years and discovered a scientifically proven way to retrain your body to burn fat efficiently without hunger, extreme exercise, or dangerous medications. PhD clients watch their belly fat disappear, their energy skyrocket, cholesterol and blood pressure normalize without starving themselves. I lost over 30 pounds and I've never felt better. So call now and mention promo code Joey for my 2 weeks for free with my program. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. On our text line, Jeff writes, the loan was a VA loan. Her father is a veteran. She is not. I'm assuming you're talking about the Letitia James loan. I knew that her father had something to do with it, because she did list him not as her father, but as her spouse. But I didn't realize it was a VA loan. That's another twist. We'll have to check into that. Thank you, Jeff. Susan from Hartwell says, Letitia James is playing the race card like a fiddle at a barn dance. You're so right, Susan. Texter, it was obvious that Biden was reading every word of his speech from a teleprompter, and that given his belligerence, he was given Adderall or something similar to keep him focused. Irritability is a common side effect of these medications. You're right. I've always suspected that Joe Biden probably was taking Adderall or something like that, particularly for public appearances, to keep him awake. But he's just always, these last few years, he's been so irritable. He's been so quick to jump at somebody. Chuck says, hey, Joey, you ask about believing creepy Uncle Joe's lies about Social Security. Not for a minute. As a libertarian, I would make the program voluntary, but not take it away from anyone. Yes, I paid in and now draw out. Thank you, Chuck. You know, as I responded to you, Chuck, I do think it's probably time to take a serious look at the Social Security program. And I'm like you, I don't think that anyone should lose it, but I think there should be probably more options for someone who would like to maybe have a little more direction of their own. But when you start talking about changing Social Security, people just go nuts. They start saying, "Oh, you're going to stop Social Security. You're going to cut it out." You know, it's always worth a look at seeing if there's a better way of doing it. Tony says, Joey, why do you make us suffer so early in the morning with clips from Joe Biden? Let sleeping dogs lie. Don't make us suffer. In the mornings, I eat breakfast, and I like to keep my appetite. Thanks. Tony, I just want to keep you awake. I want to make sure you're alert, ready. Appreciate it. Albert says, good morning, Joey. I've been receiving Social Security for years. I don't have any fear of President Trump taking it away. I believe that he will increase the return of my money. I save my money because I paid it in for over 50 years. Yep, it is your money, Albert. It's all of our money. And as someone who's getting close to that age, I've been paying in quite a number of years myself. We'll see. Faye on the MyPillow message line had this to say.
Hey, Joey, this is Faye. No, I don't worry one little bit about Trump taking my Social Security away. But let me tell you, when Biden was in office, I spent a lot of sleepless nights worrying what that crazy man might do. not only with my Social Security, but what he might do to our bank accounts as well. And I wish that all the folks on MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, I wish they could have permanent laryngitis. That's what this country needs. Thanks, Joey, for all that you do for us.
I take it Faye's not a big fan of the networks, do you? Hey, Faye, appreciate your message. You too can leave a voice message on the MyPillow message line. Just call 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. I love your messages. When you go to MyPillow.com, always use promo code Joey. And Mike Lindell still has a few of those sets of sheets left. The Giza Dream Sheets, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price of $69.99. Mike Lindell has he's given you a break because these big box stores canceled the order. He has the sheet, so he's going to pass the savings on to you. King size only $79.99. Now, you do have to use promo code Joey when you place your order at MyPillow.com or call 800-893-4059. By the way, Mike Gallagher and I are headed up to visit with Mike Lindell and his team at MyPillow a week from Monday. We'll be at the manufacturing plant to get some of the latest deals, so we'll certainly give you an update there. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98. King size, only $34.98. So go to MyPillow.com. While you're there, take a look at all the other things, the towels, the My Slippers, every product. Let's support Mike Lindell. He's a patriot, and he has suffered greatly because they have put a bullseye on his back. The left is trying to cancel him. They're trying to drive MyPillow out of business. So let's support this great American company. MyPillow.com or call 800-893-4059. Use promo code Joey. The New York Post says that former President Joe Biden's attempt to bill $300,000 per speaking appearance is not finding very many takers. The Post says that some of his own former aides say it's time for the 82-year-old to leave the spotlight for good after reminiscing about colored kids Tuesday in his first public address since leaving office. He did. He talked about colored kids. Joe Biden did. A source familiar with Biden's faltering speaking career said that the 46th president's standard pitch is $300,000, 25% below Barack Obama's $400,000 asking price when he left office in 2017. It's a little unclear how negotiable that price is. If you book him, though, you got to get him there as well. A private jet and expenses for 5 staffers are expected to get Joe Biden to your location. He has been repped since early February by a creative artist agency. The tipster to the Post said that CAA is having trouble booking gigs, which isn't surprising. Look, who would give $300,000 to hear Joe Biden mumble? Really? And he had trouble reading from the teleprompter at this speech this week. A second source told the Post that they had heard people close to Biden floating an even higher desired fee, despite the ex-commander-in-chief having a history of peddling some inaccuracies and loose tongues. His use of colored to refer to black people while speaking at a disability conference in Chicago this week has some former aides hoping he will spend more time at his beach house. It was one former White House official said this was hard to watch. It felt like seeing someone you care about start to regress. We just wanted him to enjoy retirement like other presidents, not go out like this. Joe Biden is so, what's a good description of Joe Biden? I mean, he has the ego the size of an elephant. Joe Biden still thinks that he's important, that he's still, what he has to say is still relevant. And he thinks people should give him $300,000 to talk about it. This ex-aide noted that minority staffers have been growing disillusioned even in the latter days of Biden's presidency. He was quoted telling the New York Post, black people elected Joe Biden and then his senior team cut them off, even staff hired to help with the engagement. Biden's first known speech since leaving office took place March 15th at a national high school model United Nations conference. followed by this past Tuesday's address. On Wednesday, the former president spoke to an invitation-only Harvard Institute of Politics seminar arranged by his longtime aide, Mike Donnellan. A Harvard spokesperson said Biden was not paid for that visit. The spokesperson for the organization would not respond to requests for comments from the Post. The precise reason for Biden is struggling to find top dollar audiences is unclear. Well, I can tell you, New York Post, nobody wants to hear him. Who wants to give $300,000 to have Joe Biden, who wasn't that popular when he left office to begin with? The quality of potential remarks aside, some former aides say that CAA, this talent agency, may be ill-positioned to book lucrative business conference gigs. An alternate theory holds that interest in Biden's thoughts will build over time. Yeah, sure. Yeah, the longer he's out of sight, the more popular he's going to get. I don't think so. One source close to Biden's post-presidential office said that signing the CAA was a bad decision. The Harry Walker Agency, which works with both Bill and Hillary Clinton as well as the Obamas, has relationships with all these large annual conferences and clients looking for high-profile speakers. That would be a better fit, they speculate. Look, can you not just admit that Joe Biden isn't that great of a speaker to begin with? That people just really aren't interested in what this old man has to say? Biden had little trouble raking in big sums after his vice presidency, as did his brother James and son Hunter, who offered their consulting services to foreign patrons. They easily sold influence then. I don't think anybody wants to get caught doing it now because it's become such a widespread story that the Bidens are for sale. I mean, really, what can Joe Biden do for anybody these days? Much of Biden's prior success in public speaking business came from colleges, which probably have soured on the former president after he spent 4 years in the White House railing against the high cost of education and ensuing burden, the college debt issue that he claimed he was going to take care of. Thank goodness he didn't. How much would you pay Joe Biden to speak? How much would you pay him to come to your Kiwanis Club, maybe? Email me, text me. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line. South Carolina House has been out of town this week, I guess you could say. The state Senate been working to wrap things up on this year's session on May the 8th. Joining us on our guest line, Matt Wills, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Greenville Chamber. Welcome, Matt. How are you?
Thanks, Joey. Doing well. Looking forward to a day off tomorrow and then getting back into it next week.
Yeah. So with the House not being in session, has this been sort of a light week for you?
Light week would have been nice. You get into these times where both legislative bodies kind of go on, breaks to either debate the budget or kind of consider the budget in committee process, or they go on furlough when the other chamber is doing that so as to not kind of obfuscate kind of positions on other things during that time. And now is one of those times. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is it's work. So
yeah.
I had wished it had been a slower week, but it's been a business as normal week on the Senate side.
Okay, yeah. Well, these last few weeks is always sort of a frenzy down there, I know. Now let's talk about, and I feel like we keep beating a dead horse on tort reform, but there's still a lot of moving parts there. I had the opportunity to talk with a few legislators earlier this week, primarily House members, but bring us up to date where we stand there, because there has been some things happening in the background there.
Massive moves. I think kind of a little bit of a backgrounder for those that are not quite following it the way we do. The House passed an insurance bill aimed at giving some relief to bars and restaurants that have these massive insurance premiums that they're having trouble paying. Well, on the Senate side, took a different approach. They went down the lawsuit reform route, which is a position that was massively supportive of our business community here in the upstate in our 2025 legislative agenda. But I think the bigger point to that just becomes, do we need to do just the insurance side, or do we need to look at the lawsuit side to give more relief overall to the insurance side to be able to say, look, changing the lawsuit environment from an economic side reduces premiums, and it makes sense. That's what we keep hearing from the insurance industry through Director Wise at the Department of Insurance, and that's what the Senate did. So what the Senate did this week is they took the House bill, the insurance bill, and inserted the lawsuit reform language. A lot of this is procedural stuff to kind of keep the lawsuit reform bill more on top of just the liquor liability side, the insurance side. But what we're looking at right now is the ball is now back in the House's in the South Carolina House of Representatives court to be able to say, yes, we're going to take up the Senate bill, or we're going to take up the House bill that looks like the Senate bill and pass it and finally get some relief for businesses across the state of South Carolina.
Yeah. And as I said, a lot of moving parts. so let's kind of break that down, because, I've had a couple of people this week in talking saying, well, there's been so much talk about tort reform. I don't really go to bars. I don't even drink. So why does this affect me? But it's more than just liquor liability, is it not?
It's so much more than just liquor liability. Those liquor liability premiums are written by insurance companies that have other books of service, whether it be property casualty, whether it be just property insurance, whether they're, car insurance on the car insurance side. Premiums that increase in places across the board on the liquor liability side, especially in South Carolina because of our tort environment, those increase exponentially across the realm, if you will, of insurance, because they're taking on more and more and more and more risk based on where they are. And the way our tort environment is, it allows plaintiffs to go after each step along the way, if you will. And what we've done, or what we've attempted to do in working with senators and quite honestly working with our House partners too, they've done a lot of good work. We just need to see something a little bit more comprehensive than what we have seen done on the House side. I think we feel like the Senate bill does that. Is it perfect? Again, it's not perfect. There are some things in there that are tough to swallow for certain industries. But I think those things can be hammered out as we go forward. Yeah.
On our guest line today, Matt Wills, Vice President of Government Affairs with the Greenville Chamber. For additional information on the Chamber, go to greenvillechamber.org, greenvillechamber.org. All right, so look, I think it's probably safe to say there's going to be a lot of activity, as always, in these last couple of weeks on tort reform. Let's quickly talk about the tax bill. We kind of got our hopes up a few weeks ago that maybe we're going to see a decrease in state income tax. Then we kind of learned, well, maybe it's not exactly what we thought it was going to be. Give us an update.
So Tuesday, full Ways and Means Committee on the House side has scheduled a committee meeting to hear more input on the tax bill. They're not going to be taking any votes. They're not going to be moving it forward. They're simply going to be hearing some more input on exactly what they can do to make it better. And I think that's obviously a step in the right direction. As we found out through the fiscal impact statement that was published after the bill was published, it didn't do exactly what we thought it did. And I think it surprised some House members as well. And I think they've taken a step back. And to the entire legislature's credit, they've all taken a step back and said, hey, let's make sure we got this right before we start moving this. And I applaud them on that front. I think it's a very good move, and I think we're going to see some relief. It just might not come as quick as we at first anticipated.
So is it safe to say, Matt, that probably nothing is going to happen on that? Maybe during the off season here, committee meetings, they'll do a little work there and fine tune it and come back next year?
I think it's far more likely that that's the case than we see a Hail Mary come up at the last second and say, all right, we've figured it out, we're going to pass it. I think it's far more likely that we see something perfected in the off season. Both chambers like it. We pass what we know as 4216, the tax reform bill, but it's vastly different than what we see right now.
Yeah. Matt Wills with the Greenville Chamber, thanks again for keeping us up to date here. We'll check back in with you next week. And, hey, look, it's going to be a busy couple of weeks, is it not?
It absolutely is. The Senate's got the budget next week, and then we're just business as normal on the House side until they pass that, and then it's a full sprint to May 8th.
Yep. All right, Matt. Have a great Easter weekend.
You do the same. Thank you.
Yes. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. The South Carolina Supreme Court will not stop efforts to remove State Treasurer Curtis Loftis from office by the state Senate. In a joint opinion released yesterday, the justices said this matter is not yet ripe for the court's consideration, throwing out the treasurer's lawsuit that sought to halt the so-called removal on address process. So here's what's going on here and what this means. Senators can continue with the proceedings as scheduled for Monday, when they'll weigh whether Loftis has willfully neglected his duties for his role in a $1.8 billion accounting error that went unreported for almost a decade. It's been in the news. We've talked about it a number of times. For more than a year, Mr. Loftis has maintained he did nothing wrong and compared the Senate-led investigation into a political witch hunt. Treasurer Loftis says he's prepared to make his case. I talked with Curtis just last weekend. He was at the Spartanburg Republican Party convention. Had a great conversation with Curtis. I've known him for years. And he says that this is a political vendetta. That there's, he kept saying, a couple of powerful state senators who are out to get him. And that's not a good place to be, because a state senator can cause you to lose sleep at night. In a statement, he said, "We know this process will be more political theatrics than the formal trial one would expect to overturn a statewide election." Loftis said, "We stand ready to show the citizens of South Carolina that the state treasurer's office has faithfully fulfilled our statutory duties to provide core financial management services to state government." He said, "I certainly hope that the senators will agree with us once all the information is shared." South Carolina's accounting problems, which involved almost no actual money, stem from a changeover from the state's legacy accounting system to a new one, according to Loftis and others who were involved in the process. But during the process, there was a series of what is being described as electronic ledger entries that made it appear the state had $1.8 billion sitting in an untouched fund and no record of where it was supposed to be. It wasn't a good look for the state treasurer's office, for the state comptroller general, which, by the way, the comptroller general, Rich Ekstrom, he was facing his own removal from office, and he resigned in 2023. He called it quits, went home. Former state auditor George Kennedy resigned this past January. A forensic accounting firm that was hired by the state ultimately found that staff had made the entries in error and that all but about $200 million of the money was never real. What has really drawn this whole saga out, though, was the discussion of this money literally for a few years now. And what really has probably gotten Curtis Loftis in a little more hot water is the fact that at times he seemed to think the money was there. Now, his explanation is, and again, he and I have talked about it, is that all he does is he takes what the Comptroller General, who is the keeper of the money necessary, or the accountant. The Comptroller General is like the state's accountant. The Treasurer's office, they keep the bank statements. And Curtis Loftis described that, hey, they send him over this balance. It's not his job to question the balance. The auditor had even approved the balance. So I don't know. But it's not a good look when our state thought that we had $1.8 billion in an account that was a phantom account, that the money was never there. And I digressed a bit there. What really has gotten some people's attention is the fact that a couple of times, State Treasurer Curtis Loftis even went so far to talk about, maybe there was a mistake made, and he was referencing the Comptroller General's office. Maybe the mistake was made, but nobody lost anything here. And he said, we've even earned interest on the money, and at one point quoted the amount of interest. Now, he was talking about in general terms. He was taking $1.8 billion and what $1.8 billion would have earned had it been in the account. Some state senators and other legislators have taken issue with that, saying, you should have known that it wasn't real money. You shouldn't have been talking about the interest that it earned if, in fact, it was never there. Facing removal from office, Loftis is refusing to step down. At one point, he'd even suggested he may not run for re-election. He told me last week, with all of this now, he's definitely going to run for re-election. He's going to raise money, and he's going to go across the state, and he's going to tell his side of the story. He's refusing to step down. He reaffirmed to reporters that no matter what happens next week, he's going to be running for re-election in 2026, even if he has to go deep into his own pockets, he said. Now, the fact is, he's been a good fundraiser. Curtis Loftis, for a statewide office other than governor, he's been able to raise money over the years. As an elected official, he can't be fired, but the legislature can remove him using an obscure constitutional measure which has a lower bar than impeachment and applies when an official commits willful neglect of duty rather than a serious crime. I don't know that it's ever been used in South Carolina. Under the process, the governor must remove an executive officer from office if 2/3 of both chambers of the legislature vote to remove him. What Curtis Loftis is asking you to do is to call your legislator and ask them to support him, not to vote to remove him. We'll see. Next week's going to get quite interesting. As we wrap up this Good Friday edition of the show, let's pause for a minute and talk about what Good Friday and Easter really means. In a world where everything seems upside down, these 2 days, Good Friday and Easter, still stand strong. They've been observed for over 2,000 years, and they still carry real meaning today. Good Friday is when Christians remember the death of Jesus Christ, of course. Now, that might sound grim, but here's why it matters. Jesus didn't just die. He gave his life on purpose. According to Scripture, he took the weight of our sins so that we could have peace with God. It's about sacrifice. It's about his love for us and redemption. Values our culture desperately needs today. Then comes Easter, and this is the game changer. Christians believe Jesus rose from the dead, that resurrection isn't just a religious claim, it's the cornerstone of our hope, and that's the key word there, a hope. It says that evil doesn't win, death doesn't get the final word, and there's a future beyond fear. Even if you're still figuring out where you stand spiritually, think about this. The cross shows us what love really looks like. Selfless, strong, sacrificial. And the empty tomb, that's a reminder we all need right now that hope is alive and new life is possible. That's why we celebrate. Not just tradition, not just emotion, but truth, freedom, and a Savior who conquered death for you and me. Keep that in mind, and I hope that you and your family have a wonderful, blessed Easter weekend. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.